This week's parsha, Korah, tells the story of Korah, a man from the tribe of Levi who rebelled against Moses and Aaron and challenged their authorities as leaders of the Israelites. And at the climax of the conflict between Korah and his 250 followers on the one hand, and Moses and Aaron on the other, each side brings copper incense pans to offer incense to God. And God will choose who God wants to lead the people. God, as we know, chooses Moses and Aaron and sends a heavenly fire that burns up all of the people who sided with Korah. But then we get a very strange commandment. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Order Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, to remove the fire pans, and let them be made into hammered sheets as plating for the altar." So God looks at these 250 copper incense pans that were used by the rebels in a challenge to Moses and Aaron, and he turns around and he tells Moses to take these pans and to make them into a covering for the altar, one of the holiest objects in the Mishkan, in the sanctuary. And so the question we have to ask is, what are we meant to learn from a mitzvah like this? What are we meant to learn from such a strange commandment of taking these instruments of rebellion and turning them into objects of holiness? The rabbis of the Talmud see in this passage the basis for their own fundamental teaching, that we may elevate holiness, but we may never take it away. And so these incense pans that had been used, however misguided, to offer incense to God, could never again go to the scrap pile, could never be sent to the recycling plant to be reused in other copper implements. They had taken on a level of holiness, however low that holiness might have been. They nevertheless became sanctified in that moment of offering the incense. And yet they are the objects, the instruments of rebellion. They can't be left the way they are to stand as a symbol of this challenge to Moses and Aaron. And so the only option left is to take the copper and to reshape the copper from an object with a low level of holiness into something plating for the altar with a much higher level of holiness. And so although we no longer have a Mishkan or incense or an altar, the same is true for us in our lives. Because we know that people have good intentions, people will try to do the right thing, and it won't always work out. And we have a choice in that moment of how we respond. Do we respond with criticism? Do we respond with anger? Because, in fact, we were frustrated, disappointed, let down? Or do we recognize that in their good intentions, in their genuine good intentions, comes a kernel of holiness, however frustrated that holiness might have become, however things might have turned out? Nevertheless, there was still in that moment the intention to do good. And so our parsha challenges us to recognize that intention to do good and to elevate it, to work with our friends, to work with our families, to raise up that kernel of good intention and to help others really bring their actions to fruition. And so that we have not only good intentions, but ultimately good outcomes as well. Shabbat Shalom.